Hey, what's up, everyone? You're currently tuned into TBD on KCSB FM 91.9 in Santa Barbara and netnetradio.com, Tijuana. Today, we are talking with noted modular synth and dub enthusiast baddie M. Geddes Gengras. How we doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. How about y'all?
Dude, we're just chilling.
Fantastic. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Over like the last year or so, like since things, I guess, have like becoming more like normal in terms of like social activities and stuff, like anything interesting happened to you recently, or like, I don't know, have you picked up like any new hobbies, or I don't know, do you have any like weird stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think if you came out of the last couple of years without any weird stories, like
seriously,
I don't know what you were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my life has changed a lot since the beginning of the pandemic. I started going to college, which is kind of like the biggest.
Oh, did you really? That's sick.
Yeah, because I dropped out when I was 19, like during my freshman year, and kind of just never.
You were going for acting, yes?
Yes. I was. Okay. I was a theater major in 2001. 9/11 was like during my like first week of classes. That's
goodness.
Oh wow.
That's just like to set the time and place.
Yeah.
And I was going to BART in actually not 20 minutes from where I live now in Hudson, but I just I started doing music and I kind of never looked back, and my family would occasionally bug me and ask me when I was going to go to school, and I just never did it, and I kind of didn't. There's a lot of part of me that didn't think I could, or I sort of was like, well, I'm doing this thing and it takes up all my time, and it did, I mean, music was like, aside from, playing music, I was, going to lots of shows. I was working, for the last decade plus working at record stores, working at venues, going on tour with bands, doing sound.
Yeah.
Right up until, COVID. And so when that happened, it was kind of like, I think like a lot of us who work in music were like, oh, like,
if there's no music, what am I going to do? Yeah.
It was really scary. And like, but it also, it kind of like opened up this space in my mind, to do something which I had been really thinking about for a long time, which was kind of rattling around in the back of my head, was I wanted to become a therapist.
Oh,
and,
nice.
And I was like, that's, and I think I was like, I'm in my late 30s. Like, if I go back to school, it'll take so long. And like, I'm always, playing shows and doing this and that, and who has the time? And all of a sudden I wasn't doing that. So I went back to school. And going back to what you asked about hobbies, in the spring semester, I took a ceramics class.
Oh, that's sick.
Just like sort of like on a whim. It was like, I'd done it like in elementary school and not since then, and not with any particular like interest at that point.
Yeah.
But I had to, I had elective credits I needed to fill, and I was like, well, that sounds like a really relaxing day. And the class was like once a week from 12:30 to 4:20. It just felt like a good omen. I was like, all right, I'm going to take this class. And that was like the most fun thing I did during the pandemic.
That's sick though. Yeah.
Was getting into ceramics. And if you don't mind, I'll show you. Here's one of my pieces that I made here. We've got this sort of like face with a hand for a head.
Oh,
dude, that's sick.
There's like 3 levels to this. It just keeps like
first, things. Yeah.
It looks like the thing that's in Frasier's apartment. I forget what the name of that was, but then you've got the hand on top and a little hole in the back.
The hand on top. Yeah. So this is like what I would go once a week. I would go to the community college, which is like, 8-minute drive away from here. And I would be in a room with, a bunch of kids who were like 19 to 23 years old.
Yeah.
And I am 39. And we would make pottery together, and it was amazing. It was like it became like the best part of my week. I enjoyed it so much.
That's sick.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So
that's my pandemic hobby,
dude.
To be fair, the first year of the pandemic, I kind of just like looked at my phone.
So I guess now that you're going to school and stuff, does that mean you're gonna like dial back like your music career a little bit?
I mean, it's like I felt like I was kind of already doing that to a certain degree. And like, and at a certain point, like I realized that like touring a bunch doesn't make sense for me. Like there's just, there are not a ton of places where I can play where I'm going to, make enough money for it to kind of be worth my while to be like away from home a lot.
Yeah.
And same with releasing music, if I kind of want to do what I've been doing, which is just sort of release the music that I feel like making and not really worry about any of the rest of it. I kind of have to approach it as a hobby in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I spent the last 15 years really like trying to hustle music stuff. And, there were periods of time where I didn't have a job for a while and I would be like going on tour and freelancing and doing sound and this, that, and the other, which was great, but it was, it was a hustle and it was a lot of work. It was really like unsteady at times. And I think there was a way too, in which it sort of like, it became like kind of like psychically unhealthy for me because you're, in a capitalist society like the one we live in, we're sort of like trained to kind of equate like our worth as humans with like our ability to like make money. And as a musician, like that's really like how popular can your thing be? Yeah. And like I don't really have any interest in making something that's like massively popular. Obviously I want people to listen to my music or whatever, but that's never been the primary concern. And like I just like to make music and make the things that I make. And I felt that like I was, more and more, I was kind of starting to feel like not good about it. I was enjoying it less and less. Performing live started to feel like, not pressure, but like, it was like, just sort of this, like, I don't know, my relation to it kind of got warped. And I think it has a lot to do with that. And I think that at a certain point, like I realized like, and especially having it all sort of stripped away for the last 2 years, it was sort of that happened kind of at a point where I was sort of at the peak of my dissatisfaction with it. I wasn't really going to a lot of shows. I wasn't performing a lot. I wasn't making a lot of music. And I realized like I needed to fall in love with it again in a different way. Yeah. And so a big part of that for me is like finding a way to have a career that isn't connected to music so that like music can really be like a thing that I do because it's like a joyful thing, because it's like a way that I can like share with people. And it's, it's like it's a gift that I can give. It's like
That's actually like a really cool like perspective, because that's kind of like a perspective that I have on like music too. Like, I'm always like throwing shows or like doing radio and stuff. And like, obviously music is like a huge part of my life, and all my friends and like people that I work with like understand that. And they're like, why don't you try and go into like the music industry or something? And I'm like, no, that will like take away from like everything that I fell in love with, like DIY music and stuff. Like, why would I love it? Yeah. It's like, why would I want to be a suit? You know what I'm saying?
1,000%. And DIY. And that's the thing too. And it's like, I realized like at a certain point, and again, I have no problem with like playing bigger things. I love playing like a big, beautiful room with like a huge sound system. Yeah. That's always a blast. But like, the reality is like the reason I started playing music is because I went to a show in the basement of like the local college that was next door to my high school. The band was playing on a stage that was this tall. Yeah. And they were 3 feet in front of me. And that was the first time in my life I ever had the idea like I could do that, Yeah. And that's same. To me, that's like everything. And like DIY, like, I mean, I really, I grew up in like and really like came into music and like the punk and hardcore scene and just those ethics and like, and not just the ethics of it, because that makes it seem like, oh, it's like rules and stuff, but like the joy and the community in that is,
for sure.
To me, like what I'm always chasing everywhere else. Yeah. And all of the, well, I won't say all, but most of the best people that I've worked with and that I've met in this music world, like come from, if not that subculture, like a similar subculture that has like a similar, like close knit kind of, something where like the appeal is kind of like limited to begin with, like off the bat, Yeah. And there's like a real freedom in that because there are things you can't chase,
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. That's cool that like you said that, that you have that like perspective on it. Cause that's like kind of like, I don't know. That's just how I see everything too.
And it's the best way to experience it. Like I will take a house show over, anything else because like, there's no other feeling like it. And like when you're, I think the most important thing about shows and about performing is like you're sharing space and sharing a piece of yourself with the audience. The audience is sharing their time with you. And it's like this really like, it's a really profound exchange. And the less barrier you have between those two things, the better in my mind.
Yeah. It's interesting because like the first like, so right now like our local scene has like been going off like a lot since like, I guess like pandemic or something, you know, like people are hyped to see live music again. And anyways, like before that, like the first DIY shows that I started going to, maybe like, I don't know, 7 years ago or something like that. It was one of my friends that's in like one of like the, like, I guess like scene popular hardcore bands, you know, he was throwing shows at like a $5 bookstore and then later at like one of our other friends, like bakery, like his parents' bakery. And I thought that was the sickest thing. Like it blew my mind because I was like, wow, dude, like before that I was going to shows in like theaters, you know, stuff like that.
Right.
And then
like a traditional concert.
Yeah, exactly. Like a traditional concert. And then like I'm going to like the bakery and stuff to like see these bands. And I'm learning that like these bands are coming from like all over like the country and they're just playing in this like bakery or like this $5 bookstore. And I'm just like, wow, like this is
40
sick.
other bakeries or $5 bookstores like across
That's
the
what I'm saying. And I was just like, wow,
like making it work.
Yeah. And I'm like, so these people want to do this. Like they want to play in like a bakery in like this small town, you know, like
you have to want it.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, dude, this is sick. And it was like, since then, you know, and it was kind of just all like a big spiral. Like I got involved in radio and like, you know, got like super into it, met like, you know, the network and everything. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, that it's cool.
And radio is a huge part of it too. And it's like, I mean, it's, you know, that for me, I mean, college radio specifically is like how I got into so much music.
Yeah.
As a young person, you know, in the sort of like pre-YouTube era, like it was really just like driving around and listening to the Wesleyan radio station, listening to WFMU. If I got far to south of Connecticut,
that's cool.
I could pick up WFMU. So I would just drive around and listen. And, you know, it was.
So at that time, so in your teens, you were living on the East Coast and you were over there. Because you had gone, I know you'd gone to LA. Now you're back in the Hudson, New York region over there.
Yes.
And
sorry, what were you saying?
Oh no. And so, because we'd seen in an interview you had done, I think it was with William Basinski, when you were talking about hardcore, though, specifically is like really a starting ground for you. And I'm just wondering, especially like what were really some of the formative stuff you had heard during that time, and what was maybe an album from the future of stuff you'd later get into that you wish you could have given to your 15-year-old self?
It's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, I think the reality is that like the stuff that I love now, I would have hated then. And some of it I did hate then. I mean, you know, it's the great irony of my life that I've become like a deadhead, because that was something that
was like,
sick. I was so opposed to. And, you know, growing up in New England, I was surrounded by deadheads. I went to like New England, you know, prep schools. It's just like everybody was like a deadhead. And like, you know, my cousin, who was like one of my closest friends, is a deadhead. You know, friends in LA that were dead, play it all the time. And I was just like, I can't stand this. And, you know, one day it was just like somebody flipped a light switch. But I, you know, when I was a teenager, you know, getting into music, sort of like, you know, at first it was kind of like the new metal thing of like the late 90s, and like hearing, you know, Korn's first record and stuff like that was really exciting to me. And like, you know,
we're rating those. I'm in an online group and we're rating a few of the new metal albums right now, and it's very, very fun. The Limp Bizkit album is I think a significant achievement.
I can't even imagine what that sounds like at this point. I owned it. I listened to it hundreds of times. And it's like, I can't even like the other ones, like I can like sort of like reconstruct them in my mind, you know? And it's like, I don't think there's anything cool about like being ashamed of the things you were into. Okay. But I will say a lot of that stuff does not hold up very well for me personally.
It's like,
I think also too, like working at a pizza delivery place for 3.5 years, where like that was played in the kitchen nonstop for, you know, every day.
Yeah.
It's kind of took the luster off a lot of that.
That's, you know? So funny.
But I mean, that was literally my first concert was Family Values tour in 1998.
Oh, wow. What
the
a
first
tour.
one.
What a tour.
I mean, what a tour. No, it's crazy. But to go from that to like, then like, the like student center punk show was a big shift.
Yeah.
And like, so, and, at that point too, like the sort of the hardcore scene of like the late 90s in New England was the sort of like the power violence, screamo, chaotic hardcore scene of that era. That was really prevalent there. I mean, there was a lot of other stuff going on, but that was like what I was tuned into. So seeing bands like, Orchid and Drumstream were like the bands that I would see the most often.
Sick. That's
because
so
they
cool.
were local bands, know. And I saw both of those bands like probably at least 15, 20 times, often together because they would play together all the time. And like, so that was for me, like just the sheer kind of power and like energy of that music was so appealing to me. And kind of like, and again, and sort of that combined with like the DIY thing, seeing these people play, like, they were good musicians, but it wasn't like this, like, it didn't seem unattainable in the same way that like some, like you see like Limp Bizkit play and the DJ like comes out of a giant UFO, and like, I mean, like, it's like, there's very little there for like anybody. I mean, it's cool, like I thought it was really cool, but like you can't relate to that. It's like seeing like the Rockettes, like it's a very similar kind of vibe. So like it was, but going back to your question, like I think the things I like now, which tend to definitely be more on the mellow side of the spectrum, I would have had no patience for at that age. And, but I don't know. I mean, I liked jazz. I always liked, rap music was always a big thing for me, even before punk and hardcore. And it's like always kind of remained there. And especially like the 90s, sort of sample based style.
Any particular hip hop that like really stood out there sample wise or kind of scene?
I mean, the first like music that I really got into on my own was Wu-Tang Clan. Was like like Enter the 36 Chambers was like one of the, probably first like 6 CDs I bought, for myself. And that was really huge for me. But I also, like I loved like the Fugees too. And I loved, but Wu-Tang was like Wu-Tang and then sort of that whole like first round of solo albums. Especially like Method Man, Old Dirty Bastard were the ones back then that were really huge for me. Ghostface too. I mean, that music was like really formative for me and just kind of, I think like gave me like an appreciation for sort of like more like collage based production and kind of, and again, going back to the hardcore thing, I think there's a through line of like a similar like intensity and kind of violence to the music too,
for sure.
Which was, very exciting to like me growing up in like suburban Connecticut. Across the street from a farm. Like it was a very different, it felt like very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. It's just like very alien, very foreign. It's very similar to like when I started hearing like, dub and reggae again on college radio for the first time and dance hall, especially like hearing dance hall when I was in high school, it felt like it was coming from another planet. I was like, this is kind of like rap, but like not really. And it's, and, especially that 90s stuff, it's like, each production is like 4 elements. It's like a kick drum, like a snare or a clap, like a bass instrument of some kind. And like maybe one like melodic thing, maybe one sample, and that's it. And, and the music was so wild, like I couldn't believe it. Like, so yeah, it's that sort of like that intensity and that kind of, but also just like feeling like not understanding where it came from, I think was like really powerful because it's just your imagination goes wild.
When did you start like making music?
So I guess like my little brother actually started playing music before I did. He started taking guitar lessons when he was like, I think like 11 or 12 or something.
Dang.
I just like, I didn't, I had to take like some like music lessons through school as a kid where they like made you like learn a little bit of like guitar and piano. And I was really bad at them. And I really just like did not enjoy the process. It was also a time in my life where I really wasn't interested in music. Like when I was a little kid, I didn't like think about or listen to music. Like not really until adolescence did it ever sort of even kind of like enter my, my consciousness as being like something I was interested in. But around the time my brother started playing guitar, and I was starting to get into like kind of, I guess, like weird music for the first time, hearing bands like Stereolab, the Velvet Underground, Suicide and Noi and Can. And, I had a friend that I went to elementary school and middle school with who, he would like read every interview he could find with Kurt Cobain, and he would like look up all the bands that he mentioned, and then he would like look up the bands that they were compared to. He would go and find the CDs and bring them home.
That's sick.
He would play them for me over the phone. That was like the wild. That's like the 90s thing we would do, where he would like play the CD for me over the phone, and then he would make me tapes. So like, I mean, it was like, over the course of 2 tapes, all of those bands I mentioned before, plus, the Stooges and Pavement, Yola Tango, all these other bands. I heard those over like 2 mixtapes in like 3 weeks of my life in like 1998.
I did a radio show a few years back where I went through the top 50 list there, and it's a phenomenal list. It's a kid who just genuinely loved. He knew exactly what the hell he loved, and to share it with the world and what he was trying to aim for. And the fact he's like going like the list ends with PJ Harvey's Dry in '92, and just fucking incredible to me.
It's a great, that list is amazing. And like, I don't know. It's just, it's from that sort of like old school, like I bought a Trouser Press record guide, and I would go to record stores with it, and I'd post-it notes on all the pages and, stuff underlined. And like that, I still have it. It's like held together by like 10 pounds of masking tape at this point, but it, like pages fly out, but like, that was how we did it back then. And so that friend of mine, John, he was sort of playing all this stuff for me. And around the same time, he was getting interested in making music himself. And he had bought some like cheap guitars on eBay. This was like back in the pre-Jack White days, when you could buy like Japanese, Tisco or whatever guitars for like $80 on eBay plus shipping, And he bought like 20 of these things, and they were all like busted in one way or another. But, he had them all over his room. And so he got those, and he would record on like a little dictaphone. And then I bought a Moog synthesizer because I listened to Stereolab. And then I went and saw Stereolab, and they were playing a Moog synthesizer. And I was like, I need to get one of those. I wasn't sure what sounds it was making, but it seemed like it was, because again, I couldn't like look it up on YouTube. I mean, this is like what I would do for anything now, but like I just had to kind of imagine what it sounded like based on what I knew Stereolab sounded like. And like what it,
was that was the synthesizer. I think you mentioned it was the one you got in 1999. Your first.
1999. Yeah. On eBay. And, I think it was also the first thing I ever bought on eBay.
Oh, wow.
That's sick.
And I had, I had to go. I went to the post office and I got a money order, and I mailed it to the guy, and then he mailed me the synthesizer. And I bought that, and I bought a 4-track like a month later. And that was kind of it. Like, I mean, we had like a little band. We would record together, just sort of like kind of bedroom style, like guitar and synthesizer, because that's all we had and all we knew how to play. And I didn't know how to play a keyboard really at all. I didn't have any music theory or anything. So I would just, tape down a key and kind of like fiddle with the sliders and stuff. And, and that was that. We recorded a bunch of stuff. And towards the end of high school, we like went into actually Dead Air Studios, the Will from Orchid, his studio in,
that's sick.
In the Amherst area, which I've recorded at twice. My college hardcore band and that band, we went and recorded there with like a 6-string bass player and like a crazy like really talented fusion drummer kind of guy who had like a crazy kit, and now he makes ambient music too.
Dude,
and
that's sick.
And me and the guitar player, we're still like really close, like good friends. And, that was kind of like, that was how I got into making music. And then I went to Bard and I started a hardcore band, like right when I got there, basically. And I sang in a hardcore band for a few years.
Even though because you had gotten like a second high school degree, I think you've said. Doing all of this theater work in high school.
Yeah, so my high school had a program where they offer what was called the Creative Arts program, and they had like a second diploma system for students who like put in a certain amount of like, I mean, you had to apply for it, in your field and kind of like demonstrate why. But I mean, yeah, that was really my focus then. And going into college too. I mean, I applied to Bard as a theater major. Bard has like a really incredible theater program, so that was sort of like really where I thought my life was going. I mean, I was also starting to love music. And then I think the switch for me happened when I kind of realized that like, if I wanted to do theater, I always needed to have like an infrastructure around me to do it. And like music, I mean, do it yourself. And that's what I did. I started making solo recordings with the synthesizer and the 4-track and like guitar and pedals. All these instruments I did not know how to play, but I listened to so much music and I was like, well, I'm just going to try and make something that sounds like the things that I like, just to see if I can. And like sort of, as like a creative exercise. And I made this tape that I like made like 6 copies of, and I gave to some friends around like 2002 or 3, probably. Yeah. Not long before I moved to LA. And that was like my first, release. And then I moved to LA and I made a MySpace page.
Hey.
That was, as a thing you did. And I recorded 4 songs on this like digital 8-track that my brother was borrowing from his friend to make like rap on, because my brother was making like rap beats at that point. Oh, that's
sick. Yeah.
And we would like collaborate on like beats and stuff. And then I recorded 4 songs and I put them on my profile. And then the Brian Turner from WFMU like sent me a message being like, hey, like I like your music. Like you should send into the station.
Dude, that's crazy.
To me was like, I was like, this is the craziest thing.
Yeah, that's wild.
I don't know how or why that happened. I did it. I never heard another thing. Like, like it was like one of those things where like at the moment it felt so momentous. And then you're like, oh yeah, I wonder what happened with that. Like probably nothing. But that was kind of like, that was sort of it for me. And then moving to LA, like I kind of fell into this. There was a really amazing scene around this art gallery called Echo Curio that my friends ran. And they were sort of, doing shows like 5 nights a week, pretty much like DIY music stuff. And that was where I started to get kind of like into the improv music scene.
Yeah.
Where I first started to see like some of the Not Fun bands, Rope Door and
we got to get into that. Stuff. That's where we were headed to.
Well, I'm taking you there.
Thank you.
I've been on this drive before.
We're sorry.
No, it's fine. I just like, it's funny to me that I noticed that like I'll start making the transitions. But yeah, so and then that was kind of like, that was it. Seeing those bands really like, that was, like Rope Door and Pocahontas especially. And then like, some of the sort of like, Infinite Body and Pedestrian Deposit, Earn. And,
sick.
Stuff like that was like so impactful to me in those first few years living in LA. And I really like, I saw Rope Door and Pocahontas and I just was like, I have to figure out a way to be in these bands.
Yeah.
And I just wormed my way into them. I just started going to all the shows. And then I was like, I should record, I was starting to like, I recorded music a little bit here and there and I recorded my own stuff. I was like, you guys should come over. I'll record your band, which I had no business offering to record anyone's band at that point, but I just did it. And they came over and recorded and we had a lot of fun. And then like, I would play a little bit on the record and then they asked me to join the band. Okay. And then like Pocahontas, like it was the same thing. Like I filled in for a few shows that like, Bob, Bruno couldn't play. And then, when Bethany left and it was kind of like transforming into something else, it was like, they're like, oh, you should be the drummer. And I had been playing the drums for like a month.
That's wild to
like
think.
Learning on the job,
Yeah.
And what was what was that relationship with Not Fun like, or what did it feel like at that time? Just like, hey, here's a tape label that's kind of repping all of the stuff, but then when I think about like 100% Silk or a lot of what's going on in LA DIY, it always stems back to Not Fun.
Yeah. I mean, really, like Not Fun and Death Bomb Arc, I think those are sort of like, in a lot of ways, like two of the pillars of that kind of like, of that LA, like not the noise scene, like more like kind of like the experimental and kind of out there. Experimental might have been the word, but sort of like just like, yeah, like it was just like the weird music labels. And like, I love Not Fun because the packaging was so cool and unique. And like it had like this real like handmade feel. And it just like, it felt like a crew you wanted to be in. And then like meeting them, you know, they were mostly like a, you know, I mean, Britt and Amanda certainly were like a couple years older than me. And I just like, I really like looked up to them right away because they had just made this thing, you know? And I feel like the strength of Not Fun was always their aesthetic and their ability to kind of like comb through all of this crazy music that was getting sent to them and like pick these little gems out. And like, and, you know, some of the artists, you know, go on to make like, you know, our Sonora or whatever that go on and have these like, you know, big careers. And a lot of them aren't. It's like some weirdo in the Midwest with like a, you know, a 4-track and like a chord organ. Yeah. And that's cool too. And it's all like kind of weighted equally. Yeah. So it was just super inspiring, like the scene around it, because it was already going when I moved there. So it was just like, it was like seeing it and being like, okay, this is where I need to be, you know? Yeah, that's cool. These are the people I need to hang out with. And I remember, you know, talking to Britt early on and he was like, you know, he's like, if you want to like hang out with somebody, if you want to be friends with somebody, he's like, do a project with them. So I just started like kind of like doing projects with everybody and inserting myself into other people's projects and like, and, you know, I think I always made an effort to be like an easy person to work with. I think like I'm a pretty easy guy to get along with for the most part. Maybe to a fault sometimes. But I think that really helped me in that way because, you know, I would do stuff with people and they'd be like, well, you know, I wouldn't mind spending a month in a van with that guy. I can imagine worse, you know? And that's such a huge part of it in the end, because it's like, especially on that level, we never made any money from any of that. It was just all about like having the experience and like, it felt like a little like gang. Like we were like a little crew and it was very close knit, you know, it was very close knit.
That's sick. Yeah. So was like Dub Lab a thing back then? Were you involved with like any of like the early Dub Lab stuff in LA at that time?
I mean, it was a thing. I knew about it and it was like, I had friends who had shows on, so I would guest, you know, I guest DJ'd on Matthew David's show. I guested on my friend Butchie's show. And you know, when once I started to play solo more and kind of like, because the first few years in LA, I was really still figuring out my solo thing and like making music in general. And like was doing a lot of guitar stuff still and like working with a lot of like acoustic instrumentation. And when I kind of like settled into the synthesizer stuff and then like kind of more broadly or like specifically like into the kind of like more like pretty, you know, ambient-y stuff, they started to book me because they were always doing really cool events. And I mean, you know, most of the coolest shows I ever played in LA were Dub Lab related. Like I got to play in the, you know, on the floor of the Gem and Mineral Hall of the Natural History Museum.
Oh, that's
with, like,
sick.
Projections on like every surface.
Yeah, that's
surrounded
crazy.
by like the most incredible, you know, rocks you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
And, like, I got to play the Tonalism in Marfa, where like,
dude, they just had a Tonalism. That's sick.
Yeah. I mean, that event every year was always amazing. Like, that was like a highlight of the year. And, you know, it was something that was perfect for me. Like it was, you know, every year I wanted to play that. Like it was, you know, and then, just, you know, I kind of like, you know, my bands would play on there and I just sort of developed a relationship with Frosty and with Ale and they, you know, at a certain point they offered me a show.
Yeah. Did you ever have a show? I was going to ask.
I have a show. I my show's airing tonight.
Oh, dude, that's sick. I didn't even know you had a show, dude. That's tight.
Yeah, I've had a show for like 7 years. I don't always do the best job of publicizing it because I don't do the best job of publicizing anything, really. But it's I know I've done a show. The time slot moved a few years ago, but it's now the second Mondays of the month from 10 to midnight West Coast time, which means since I'm on the East Coast, I rarely actually hear it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I still do a show. I've done a show for a long time. I've brought a lot of, you know, cool guests on and stuff.
Yeah, dude.
And the archive is there. I mean, there's I've probably been doing it for like 8 or 9 years. I don't know. I lost track.
Dude, that's crazy. I didn't even know you had a show.
Like,
I'm gonna have to
archive is
listen to that.
there.
That's sick.
You can dig into. There's years worth of 2-hour shows. Yeah. I love Dub Lab. I just like, I think it's an organization that like exists entirely to make like cool things happen for musicians and lovers of music. And that's it. And the people who run it are fanatical music heads. And it's always been like the most welcoming, friendly environment in LA. And like,
dude, I think Dub Lab is so cool, dude. Like if I ever go to LA,
you wouldn't have any of these other, you wouldn't have NTS, you wouldn't have any of that.
Straight up. Yeah.
Like, and it's like, there will be the flavor of the months will come and go. And, and Dub Lab is like, it's an institution in a very real way, like,
I think it's crazy how Dub Lab has just been able to like sustain themselves as an internet station for this long. Like I think it's so crazy that they're able to just like stay a thing, because there's like so many internet stations too that just like aren't like really like a known, like I don't know, they're not as known as Dub Lab, but Dub Lab is known literally like all over the world, and they're just an internet station. It's crazy.
Well, but it partially because they were one of the first. And I think I got there first. But it's it's crazy. I mean, when I went to Japan, like I think 10 years ago, whenever that was, I was on tour with my band. And we went into a coffee shop and they were listening to Dub Lab.
That's so sick.
I was like, this is the best.
Yeah, that's wild.
I was like, that means that somewhere at some time that this coffee shop has probably been listening to my Dub Lab show.
Yeah.
And that just like, that's, yeah. I mean, it's an organization, and, as because you guys are involved in one too. It's like these organizations are run purely on love. And passion.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's such a gift, not only to the audiences, but to the musicians as well.
Yeah.
Because like we need this. We need these things,
Where can we go for? Let's honestly, because you've just been doing an incredible job of, I think, leading us down a sect that we were going to try to get into. So naturally, just thank you so much. But 2012, we're now celebrating a decade of the one time you got an 8.1 on Pitchfork. Congratulations. And that's Freakways number 9. The release you did with local, Son of Ra, the other Los Angeles oddball, and then the Congos.
Yeah.
I did
Jamaican
somehow
oddballs.
This completely went past me. I know bits of the Revenge International catalog, and like I just found out about the Chris and Cozy release, so I just played that on my show last week. But this release itself, it also got me. I'm going to get that Congos album now from my library. What was that moment in particular, kind of 2010, 2011, building up to 2012 like? And what were probably some of the most significant lessons you got going down to Jamaica and getting to work down there?
Wow. It's a big question.
It's a small one. Small.
No, it's a great question. It's a great question. Because it's, it's something I, as you can imagine, like I've probably talked about this more than I've talked about like anything else that I've done in my life in terms of like, interviews and stuff. But that the way you phrase that there is really, I really appreciate it. So thank you. So it happened really fast. We didn't, it was not something that I was lobbying for or planning for in my life whatsoever. It was not even a possibility that I'd ever considered, the sort of skeleton of the story is that Cameron Sunara got approached by Matt Worth, who runs Revenge, and saying he wanted him to do a Freakways record. And for the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with the series, Freakways is a series where artists of the current day work with artists of the previous generation that, were an influence on them. So, and Matt is this incredible, like amazing angel of a human being who just like makes dreams come true for artists. And this, certainly is like one of those times. So Cameron submitted to him like this long list of artists he wanted to work with. And like, he was really pushing for Henry Flint. I remember was like his number one. And Matt was like, these are cool. But also I was thinking, what about the Congos? The Congos were not on Cameron's list. Congos would not have been on my list because I think for both Cameron and I, though we were big fans, I don't think either one of us had ever considered that like that was a thing one could do. Like the Heart of the Congos for me, I first heard Heart of the Congos when I was a freshman in college, you know, in a dorm room, sitting around a gravity bong, you know, like it's very like a classic story, a tale as old as time. And, you know, since that day, it's just, I think it's one of just the most amazing pieces of music ever created. And the fact that it almost never got released, that like, you know, the story behind it with Black Ark and Scratch, and like, it's this incredible tale around the record that's so deep. It just felt like this like mythical object. And like thinking about the Congos as humans who lived and existed in the current day, like, it's just like, it had never even occurred to me. But Matt had a connection to the Congos through this guy, Sam Fleischner, who's a filmmaker. He'd made this film. It was his first film called Wadu Dam, which was about a guy who goes to Jamaica on a cruise and ends up like with his wife or fiance. They end up breaking up on the trip. And at one point, like sort of pinnacle scene in the movie, he walks onto this beach at night and the Congos are there and they're playing, you know, acoustic guitars and singing on the beach. And so through that connection, Matt could get in touch with Congos. And so, you know, Matt asked Cameron if he'd like to do a record with Congos. Cameron said yes. And of course, and they sent some of his music to the band, and they were like, yeah, this is cool. Like, sure, let's do it. And then Cameron called me because at that point, Sun Ra had it had always been like a duo kind of thing. And at that point, the person he was playing with had just stopped playing with him. So he was kind of like in between bandmates. And he knew that I was, you know, like a reggae obsessive. And he also knew that I was a good engineer and, you know, could probably like move my way around like an unfamiliar studio. And we'd played in Pocahontas together. We'd played in a few other things together over the years. And it just like, I think to him, it felt like a natural, safe choice because it was also like, you know, we were going down there to make a record with the Congos, like, and neither one of us had ever been to Jamaica before. We'd never met these people before. We kind of really didn't know how it was going to work when we got there. Like, we didn't know if there were going to be musicians. Like, you know, were we going to do all the music ourselves? Like, how, you know, everything was very much up in the air. And so we got together for like a couple times before we went down and like made some kind of like beats and, you know, sort of song skeletons just to have something there. And then, yeah, I mean, like the story of making the record, I've told many times, and it's, you know, it's probably not as interesting as it sounds in my head, but, you know, we were there for about a week and a half and we made the whole record kind of top to bottom there. And it was an incredible experience. And, you know, we went and we lived with Ashanti Roy in his home. We recorded in the studio, like on the first floor of his house. We ate with them. We, you know, went to the beach with them. We went to concerts and we got shown around the island. We stayed in Portmore, which was like not an area that tourists really ever go to. So we got to see the side of Jamaica that, like, you know, most people who are going on vacation, like, just don't ever experience. And it was definitely like, you know, I won't say that we weren't scared at first. I mean, it was very intense to kind of get there in the middle of the night and it's noisy, hearing like gunshots in the distance. There's music everywhere. There's dogs. And like, it was very disorienting, you know? But I thankfully, like, we were so worried about finishing the record that we just didn't really have time to be like that freaked out by anything else. We were like, we have to make, because we were like, we're here for a week and a half. We have to have the music done in like 4 or 5 days that they can write and record the vocals, you know, and we didn't know how long that was going to take. So like, we really just like, and you know, that very first day, it's, you know, we're sitting there, it's me and Cameron, Bravo, the engineer, all 4 of the Congos were there that day. And like 5 other people in this tiny little room, everybody standing around watching us. And they're like, okay, what do you want to do? And we were just like, you know, and we had to like build up like our weird music kind of from scratch. And everybody was kind of like looking at us like, what is this?
Yeah.
But spending time with them and like sort of getting to know everybody, like we really like came to like a great understanding with each other about, sort of what the music was. And like, and Cameron and I were really set, like we knew we shouldn't try to make a reggae record because, I mean, we wouldn't have done a good job with that. There's plenty of people who are very qualified to make a reggae record, and we are not those people. And so like sort of like communicating what we wanted to do to them and like kind of getting everybody on the same page. We talked a lot about like the Nyabingi drumming and chanting, and like a lot of that got sort of integrated into the music of the record. And yeah, I mean, it was an absolutely life-changing experience. Like, I mean, my first time sort of like outside of, the North America or Europe. So that's a whole thing, like, seeing like what a country like in a very different, kind of economy than ours is like, and getting to see it really firsthand, like how people living with people, not seeing it from above or like from the side, but like in there. I mean, that alone was like really amazing. Sort of understanding the depth and level of which like music like permeates the culture there was really beautiful. And it really made me kind of reappreciate music, and especially like music in public spaces, and like how cool and important that is. Something that's so like kind of undervalued in our culture, but there you heard music everywhere you went, and everybody listened to all of the music. And, you'd go to a party and there would be like an 80-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they both knew the words to every song.
Yeah.
And so it's just like that sort of like, I don't know. We have so many like weird sort of cultural divisions around music and culture here, and it's so fragmented. And, partially I think because Jamaica is a very small place, and because they have this really outsized place in the world music industry for their, I mean, name another country that size that's had that kind of impact. You can't, there's, very few countries at all that have had that kind of impact, on music production, and how, DJ culture, all these things come from Jamaica. Like, so I could go on and on. It was just like, it was, for me, it was like really like, it was going to Mecca, and like, and getting to like really experience like the home of this music that I love so much. And it just gave me an entirely like deeper, new appreciation for it. And like, if I loved reggae before, like I was obsessed with reggae afterwards. And it just, I don't know, it was incredible. It changed my life. And we found a way to keep going back over and over again by doing Duppy Gun, because we said we have to find a way to keep this magic happening somehow. And so we started a label just to like keep working with all these incredible artists that we met there,
Are you still actively using that label or doing stuff?
Yeah. So Duppy Gun is it's a funny thing because, Cameron and I are probably like two people who have like very little interest in the sort of business side of running a record label. We've been really blessed to work with like really amazing labels in the past, like Stone's Throw and Bokeh Versions.
Oh, that's sick.
Who have done, production and distribution and helped us along with a lot of the stuff. We're sort of currently like in an in-between zone. The label kind of, it goes in waves.
Yeah.
But it's, but the project kind of remains, I mean, I think the really big thing that we did over the past couple of years was, and we did this pretty much entirely off of Bandcamp money, was we built a Duppy Gun studio in Jamaica.
Dude, that's sick.
Run by Ijabar, one of our artists. And
it's
we were
still
able
there?
to finance him. Yeah, it's still there. He built it himself. We were able to pay for equipment and ship stuff down to him. And so there's a Duppy Gun studio. It also has like a little shop on the front where they sell like fruit and vegetables and
dude, that's
juices
so
and
sick.
Stuff. So for us, like the project of Duppy, aside from like trying to keep the Jamaica bridge, open for us, is really been one about like funneling money down to Jamaica and to Jamaican artists. So, Cameron and I, we've been doing it for, as you said, like about a decade now. We've never taken any money from it. It's always, all the money we've made has always gone directly to the artists. Most of the producers we worked with, the vast majority of them have never taken a dime. and all the money goes to the vocalists. And it's, it makes a big difference there. And
yeah, that's so cool. It goes straight back to like the community that like you're, I guess, not like benefiting from, but that you appreciate so much, like.
Yeah. Well, and that we work with, and it's like, there are, it's like, these are the people that like, when we go there, we stay with them. They take us around. Like it's a very like mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah.
And, and there's such a history of exploitation in the Jamaican music industry. And, it's like, it's very easy to kind of like ignore that stuff. But, for us, it was really important to do it in like an ethical way, and to, and like, in the end, it's like the label doesn't make a lot of money, but what we do goes, like you said, goes back into those communities. Building a recording studio, it not only benefits us, it benefits Ijabar because he has a business he can run. It benefits everybody around him because they can record there. And because he's a good guy, he's not going to exploit the people in his community. He's going to take good care of them. And it just, it ripples out. It does good. It like creates more in the universe. Like more music will exist because we built this thing. And so to me, that's kind of like the ultimate goal of Duppy is to find ways to like help these musicians do what they want, and then, to just make really cool music. I mean, that's, that's the other side of it.
That's cool. And I know that Cameron, I believe, has another label, right?
So Cameron runs Sunark. Like he started a label but it's, it's his imprint through Drag City.
Okay, yeah.
So they sort of like handle all the business side of things, and he's like the
curator or something. Like.
Yeah, I mean, he mostly started it to put out his own stuff. He does a lot of other people's releases on tapes. He's done a few other people's things on LPs, but like mostly.
Thomas did a radio show for Sunark. He did a Sunark radio hour.
Oh yeah. That's actually like a sort of an intro that I had to sort of like more, I guess, like, I don't know, that realm of like that scene of things, because like my friend actually, I think like did a record on there. My friend Rob McGill.
Rob. I love Rob.
Yeah.
You love Rob.
Yeah.
I love Rob.
Rob's
I guess I should be Santa Barbara.
Homie.
Yeah. It's, it's like
Yeah, Rob's a good homie, dude. And so that was like kind of
Rob
how...
is a brilliant musician too.
Oh my God.
Rob is like
one of the most underrated people that I met on that whole sort of like West Coast scene.
I was literally just about to say that, like literally the most like underrated guy ever. Yeah, dude. Like,
except by every musician who knows him.
Yeah,
every musician who knows him is like, Rob's the best.
I know. Yeah.
Like, in the Tabs Out review I did on the Orange Milk tape he guest stars on, I think I had to. I sweared. I don't like to swear on my reviews, but I had to swear because they got Rob fucking McGill.
Yeah,
to like
dude.
Lay down like some stuff here.
I know. Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like the people that know Rob, it's like they know he's sick as fuck. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I met Rob through like Alex Gray and Deep Magic and like that whole when they were starting to play in LA. Like, I mean, some of those early like Deep Magic shows were so good.
That's sick.
So good.
Dude, we had Rob at a gig. He did a duo set, like a surprise duo set with Marshall Trammell. Are you familiar with him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, dude. And Marshall was like, I'm coming into town, Rob, like let's do this gig. And so they did it together. And I was like, wow, dude, that is so sick. Like, yeah, it's cool.
That's so cool. Yeah, Rob's the homie. Legend.
Yeah.
Sleeping on a couch in like the corner of a show. Like
yeah, dude. Yeah. Anyways, Maddie, do you want to take us into our next topic?
Oh, goodness. Okay, let's see where we're doing. So we've talked a bit, I think, or we kind of tiptoed around the writing process of some of the albums you've done, just, kind of how things have gone. But in a lot of different interviews, at least you had done kind of halfway through the 2010s, you'd emphasize how asynchronous that process could be. Some of these albums that you've done have been realized within like a few days. And then others like your 2020 tape for Hosmo that took several years, if not including pieces that go back to the early aughts. But in terms of like, and I think we kind of, even as you've mentioned at the start of this interview, just how your writing process or how you even want to present your music more as a hobby, it's led to just kind of like stuff comes out more naturally now. But at this point, has there like truly been an evolution in, how you think about the writing and composition for what you're going to present or pitch to a label?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, one of the things that I really and I like cannot overstate the importance of this enough to me, is like working with Hausu. I've had this relationship with other labels as well, but it's hard to find, and definitely not all labels I've worked with. Working with Hausu, I really feel like I can just send them a record and they'll be like, yeah, that's cool, we'll do it. So like there isn't that like, and I mean, it's the same when I was doing stuff with Intercoastal Artists, which was Kip Ulhorn from Cloudland Canyon.
That's sick.
And from Red Scare, who I saw in high school.
Oh, I love Cloudland Canyon. That's a great act.
Yes, amazing. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, Kip is like a genius of that kind of like melodic krautrocky kind of vibe. He does that better than anybody. Anyways, I did a couple records with him when he was running that label, and his whole thing, he was like, just send me anything you want and I will put it out. And so, I mean, I did the second record I did for him, which was the interior architecture one, was something that I'd always wanted to do, which was this sort of like, a double LP, much more sort of freeform collage style, more experimental, and really just focused on like sounds that I really loved. And, drew on, years and years of recordings, just like bits and pieces from there. The second Hausu tape is a good example of that too, where it's like, some of those pieces are like nearly 10 years old or maybe older at this point. And some of them most of them I made like in the week that I made the tape. But I kind of, I just sort of, I slot stuff away a lot because I just don't have a home for it yet. Especially, it's not as much now, but in the mid 2010s, like 2010 through sort of like 2015, 16, I was recording a lot, like almost, at least a few times a week I was recording music, and I amassed, and at that point too, it was sort of faster than I could really hope to release it. So I amassed a lot of backlog at that point. And one thing I've been trying to do is like dig through some of that stuff and get it out in some manner, because I just realized like otherwise it just will rot away. And like sort of the longer it takes, like the less I connect to it. Some of it doesn't make sense until 10 years later. Like when I'm working on this like insectoid, alien, techno adjacent Hausu thing, that I'm like, oh, I have this weird, like messed up kind of techno-y thing that I made that it was always too weird for like the personable stuff, which I always wanted to be a little more like slick and craftworky, but it fits perfectly with this vibe. So I'm going to put it on there, but the process, it really comes and it goes. Like these days I tend to like not work on music for long stretches of time, and then kind of go in and make something pretty fast. And then either it's done or I will then tinker with it for a lot longer. The record that's coming out next month on Hausu is a great example of that. I made the 6 tracks over 4 or 5 days. And,
oh, wow.
Just sort of like I was kind of bummed on myself because I hadn't been making much music. And this is before I started going back to school. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to set a challenge to like, I'm going to wake up in the morning and I'm going to work on a piece of music and I'm going to finish, like at least like the skeleton of a song. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do that every day. And it lasted for a week, but whatever. I mean, it lasted for, actually it didn't even last for a week. It lasted for 5 days because of course, like, damaged album pilled brain. I'm like, oh, this is an album. And I had these, these 6 pieces that had this kind of, they were all at the same BPM. They were built, I made them the same way, which was like on a sampler, with samples that I had made. So it's kind of like limited palette of sounds of, samples I made from like different digital synthesizers I have. And sometimes things like that that's the easiest way to make a record because you're just like, okay, that's what it is. I mean, the Hawaii tapes one is another good example because it's just like, here's a Volca FM plugged into a delay pedal, plugged into a reverb pedal. And that's it, and like, you're like, okay, I will add bass to this or, but it just kind of like, it is what it is. It doesn't need to be expanded upon. And so I had these 6 pieces that I really liked. I felt really good about. It felt like they were missing a little something. And I sent in my brother and I was like, if you want to try playing guitar on like one of these. That would be great. And he played guitar on 5 of them, and he was like, "Oh, just pick one."
That's sick.
And I used all 5 because I was like, "Oh, this is all great," you know. So yeah, and it was just it kind of came together really quickly. Except I made the tracks in 5 days. I probably waited like 6 months. Sent them to my brother. He sent it back, and then I mixed. And once I kind of mostly finished it, I sent it to Houseu just to be like, "This is what my next thing is going to be. I don't know when it's going to be done, but like, what do you guys think?" And mostly just because it's nice to hear what they think. And they're, really, really nice guys. And they're always very encouraging with me. And they were like, "Yeah, this is great." And so I just, mixed it a little, I added a little bit here and there, but the meat of the record was done in, like I said, 4 or 5 days. The M Goddess record is the same thing. Lena and I recorded that in like 4 days here in Hudson. And then like it sat on my hard drive for 2 years before I started doing overdubs and mixing and stuff. And it's sometimes it's just like you make it and you put it in the slow cooker for a year.
Yeah.
And then it like makes more sense to you. Also I think because I just haven't been as like, I do like, sort of, I've been doing imagery. So like I do more like Bandcamp releases that to me are like either like archival stuff or kind of more like minor works. But with the records, like I'm not really in a big rush to make them because every time I finish one, I realize I have no ideas for the next one and that I'm never going to be able to make another album and I need to quit making music. So like it's kind of like stressful to actually finish them. So I kind of like to leave them hanging in like this
just chilling
space where they're just like it's not done yet. I don't have to worry about like what is next yet because it's finishing that is next. And I just don't put myself on like a clock or anything or be like, "Oh, you got to release this much this year." It's just, it's like if I feel like doing it, I'll do it. Having a label that is fun to work with, like Houseu, and that, pays me well and like that just like is really like genuine and sweet and like enthusiastic about my music. It makes me want to make more music because it just like, it's like, okay, I know what I'm going to do with it now,
Can you talk about that one record, I guess just briefly, that you released it, I believe in 2020. It was like the pink one. You had Bryn do the artwork, I think.
Oh yeah. You
self-released it.
Echelons Beyond Reality.
Yeah, that one was sick.
Yeah, so that was
I was surprised that like wasn't on like a label because I was like, yeah, that was just super cool.
It was, it was one of those things where like I could have sent it to Doug and Max, but like I think I was like, realistically, that means that it'll come out in like 6 months or something, if that. And they have a busy schedule and they have a lot of artists that they work with, and they tend to plan things out pretty far in advance. And sometimes I just do not have the patience. And I just like, I want to, like, I just want to get it. It's like, I finished it. I'm never as excited about it as I am right when I finish it.
Yeah.
And like that one, the other one that the second Houseu tape I put out, the Time Makes Nothing Happen, which was, originally was a Bandcamp release, and Max was just like, "Yo, this is so sick. We have to put this out."
Yeah. And
we were talking about doing that with Echelons too, but then I was like, no, I have this thing I'm working on. I want that to be my next release. But it was, I made that one right when I got that sampler, and it was a Christmas gift for my wife, and it was my first sampler actually. I'd never had a sampler before, which is weird. It just like, I had like a broken semi-working like Dr. Sample like 101, like the old school one, for a while, but it didn't, I just never made music with samples. I always worked with synthesis. So it was just like always my thing. And I got really into this thing because I could sit on the couch and I could put on my headphones and I could just like make a song.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, all the drums are there. Like, and I started making like I made my own samples. I was also motivated because I bought this synthesizer and I wanted to sell it. And I was like, I should just sample all of the sounds and then I can just sell it.
Yeah.
I was like, no harm, no foul. And what I realized was like, there was something so easy about working with it all in the one box that like, it just made me sit and finish a track and then start another track and finish that track. So like the Echelons record, it was again, like stuff that I made like in the first few days that I had that, probably like just fooling around and kind of like, when I go back, the tracks aren't in chronological order that they were made, but like, most of them actually all the ones on that one still exist on the sampler. So I can see, you know, it's like one is number 1, one is number 2, one is number 3 in the slots. And I can go through them and be like, oh yeah, this is when I learned I could do this. And then like I learned this trick here that you could like do this, or you could have fills and like add another layer of variation. So I can really like hear my progression of sort of understanding and learning the piece of gear when I listen to that stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
But it was, for me, it was just like, I was like, I loved the sounds that I was making with it. And I just thought it was really fun. And, you know, it was Bandcamp Friday was coming up. I wasn't working.
Yeah.
Like, it was, you know,
yeah.
Like, let's go. You know,
yeah.
I was really trying to hustle those Bandcamp Fridays. Cause again, prior to that, I'd been working in live sound and my job disappeared. So it was, you know, it was like, it was a weird time for sure. But it was nice because it kind of just forced me to like make music and not like be precious about it, but just be like, make something, knock it out, put it up on Bandcamp. I realized that if I had Bryn do the artwork, it would feel very like pro to me all of a sudden. And I noticed too that like people responded so much more to those releases than the ones where I would just like put up a photo or something on the cover. And I mean, he's such a, you know, talented designer. And so it's just like, okay, like this is, you know, so like we do mostly work trade because I'll do mastering work for him and stuff. And he'll do design stuff for me, which is, you know, the way things should be.
Yeah.
DIY. And if you can't get someone else to do it for you.
Yeah. Straight up.
to do something for them. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Skillshare.
Yeah, exactly. Skillshare. And speaking of which, we have a long talked about, not yet realized duo project called Skill Tree that one day will materialize.
Dude, that's sick, actually.
Skill Tree. He came up with that name.
Yeah, what a sick name. That's funny.
We knew it had to be like video game related because we knew each other. It's funny, we knew each other over the years. We met, you know, in different cities playing music, like on tour and stuff. But then we became really close during the pandemic, and it was mostly like we would late at night. I would play Bloodborne with him, and we would like get on the phone and like just like play Bloodborne for like 3 hours together, and just like, and that was it. We just became homies. Like, you know, like let's slice. All right, you know. So shout out to Bryn because he's the man, and his music's incredible.
Dude, his music is sick. He hasn't released anything in a while, but
I'm sure there'll be more. I'm sure soon.
I hope so.
I should get on him about it because I mean his stuff is so original to me. It's just like it's such a, you know, I mean, it's definitely ambient adjacent, but there's so much going on and like sort of the rhythmic layers, and it's, you know, it's knockout. I love it.
And his project Antlered before that was pretty sick too.
Yes, I have the LP. I mean, that's when I met Colin like way back when.
Yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, it's like the small world stuff, but you know,
I thought it was pretty crazy looking back at like the stuff that on what was it? It's the Jewel Garden now. What was it before that label? Maddie? Digitalis. Yeah. Those like old releases from like back then. Yeah. And there's like Antlered stuff on there. And I'm just like, dude, that's wild. This is just like an archive of like a different era of all these people that are making stuff under like different names and stuff, you know?
My old band with my brother, we did a couple of things on that label, or we did one thing on that label. And so I was in a band with my brother called Antique Brothers. We had like 4, 5, 6 releases. We did like a Not Enough Fun tape and
that's sick.
Digitalis CDR, you know, like a lot of CDRs. We did like a lot of like cool CDR releases back in the sort of between like 2006 and 2008, I think, or 9, somewhere around there.
And you did have a Sunark release. Was that one of the Warm Climates tapes?
Oh yeah, that's right. I am on the Warm Climate thing.
You do Warm Climate with Seth?
I mean, I was in the band for a while. I did. Warm Climate has been going at this point for, you know, it's got to be close to like 2 decades at this point. I mean, it's, you know, it's a long running project, but there was a while when there was sort of like it manifested as like a power trio for a long time. My friend Jake was playing bass, and then they went on a tour with Jake, and he realized that he never ever wanted to go on tour. And was like, yeah, that's cool, not for me, you know. And so I started playing bass for them, and we played together for a while. And Seth I lived in this house in East LA for a long time, and there was a little like guest house. It was up in the hills of City Terrace. There was a little guest house above the main house, and he lived in the guest house, and we worked together at a record store in the Valley. So we would we spent a lot of time together. Yeah.
Dude, that's cool.
Seth is a great guy.
I know Seth through his like radio show Net Radio.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've been on that. I did a like a pre-recorded performance for that.
Oh, that's sick. Yeah.
Seth is amazing. He's like a real head, knows everything about music, for sure. And is just also like so talented.
He sent his tapes, and I think one of his most current one that you have mastered. That was another thing. Mm-hmm. Some of the first times I think we came across your name, I'm like, Geddes mastered this. Geddes Hasute. Oh, he has the Hasute, and he just mastered Seth stuff. And then looking, I'm like, he played with Seth back in the day.
Yep. Yeah. No, Seth has kind enough to entrust all this mastering work to me for the past few years, and it's I guess it's great. And we have a great relationship because I know what he wants, and
I guess that's something we want to talk about too. Is like, I guess like the first time I started seeing your name was like like when you mastered a bunch of people's stuff. Like, do you want to talk about how you just like got into that?
Yeah, I mean, I was basically like, I was into recording like from a pretty young age. Like I said, I got that 4-track, and it was, I couldn't play music. Like I didn't know how to play music, but I knew how to record. And so like by recording, you could like make music even if you couldn't play music. Mm-hmm. Like that was kind of like my get down. And again, I think it's like the reggae and dub influence, studio as an instrument, all that kind of stuff. Like that was always really my interest.
Yeah.
And then, at a certain point after I moved to LA, I got like my first like Pro Tools set up, and my friend Grant, who was in this, who co-ran Echo Curio and was in this improv group, VXBXC, taught me how to use Pro Tools. And, and he used to master stuff for me, and we had very limited understandings of mastering at that point. It was, basically running it through like the PSP Vintage Warmer compressor plugin and blasting the shit out of it and then calling it a day. Like that was our technique. But yeah, I mean, it was just like, I think as I started working on music and understanding like how things sound, and also like listening to a ton of music, it just like, and also a big part of it was like sending things off to get mastered and then hearing them when they came back. I mean, like,
I didn't like that. Yeah. I could have done that. Why'd I pay this?
But also, it's like very early on, like, on an early Pocahontas tour, we played in Philadelphia. I met James Plotkin and I talked to him for like 10 minutes about like mastering. And like, he gave me a lot of really good tips. And like, and it was just, but his main thing was like, he was like, just, don't listen to what anybody says, use your ears, and like, and I just started doing it, at first just for myself and for my friends. And then, I was doing a lot of it for not fun just because they didn't have anybody else to do it. And I would do it for, free or very cheap, and they had to pay Plotkin, And so like I ended up mastering a lot of the tapes, became my thing. It was like mastering for tapes. And so I learned like how to make something sound good on cassette.
Yeah.
And that was it. I just got more and more into it. It was like, I think mixing and production stuff, I love doing that, but it's very in-depth work. It takes a lot of time. It requires a lot of communication with the artist. I think the thing that appealed to me about mastering is something I could do on my own. And then it's kind of just like, you send me this stuff, I send it back to you. What do you think? We make adjustments and go from there. And it's not really about, for me at least, it's not about making any kind of aesthetic decision. It's about like trying to hear what's there and hear what they want it to sound like, and then get it, that last like 5 or 6% of the way there. And it's, it's like it's a good little hustle. Like once you kind of learn how to do it, I mean, I definitely don't claim to be the best, but I think for what I charge, I do like a really good job.
Yeah. And
for certain kinds of music, I think I have like the understanding of like what it should sound like. And, because I am a musician, so I think that's part of it too. It's like having that perspective,
That's cool. Maddie, do you want?
But it's also like any way to make money, music, because they're few and far between. So like, it was just like, here's another hustle that I can like throw myself into.
Yeah, a lot of this,
and I really like it. I mean, it's like a puzzle. It's like a very I use like the same, like, I mean, I do pretty much most of my mastering with like everything in
that's sick.
That rack right there.
Yeah.
So it's like, here's like 20 knobs, like make it better. You can only turn these 20 knobs, and then it's like, okay, it's a puzzle,
That's really beautiful.
So like,
I guess this is something kind of just tiptoeing into some of your gear. You just briefly showed us some stuff. Favorite story or kind of most essential kind of piece of equipment you've got, whether or not it lends itself to a particular vibe or mood. And then is there kind of some hard bars of instruments or material, equipment you've got that you just will not mend together?
Wait, say that last one again.
Are there some instruments or pieces of kind of musical equipment you've got that you're just like, nope, this does not mend with this. This is like a red X. I'm not.
Yeah. Like things that don't like mesh well together. Like, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like gear that I love, like, I mean, the most important things to me are like, I like having like a really nice delay sound. Unfortunately, all my tape echoes are like currently either on loan or broken. So I'm without temporarily. I think that out of my gear that I have right now, and that's functional because, that's another thing is, especially after moving to like rural Northeast New York, it's like, or the rural Northeast in New York State, rather, not Northeast New York, because that would be Canada, basically, is the gear techs are not as abundant as they were in LA. So it's like when something breaks, it's kind of harder to get things fixed.
Yeah.
But, I think my Moogs definitely spring to mind as something that it's just like, they're instruments that like I can sit down at and just like instantly, I can have nothing in my head when I sit down in it and I can just kind of make music come out. I've been playing them for so long. I have this really like, at this point, very like tactile understanding of like how they make sound and the different sounds you can get out of them. I'd say too, like probably my favorite piece of gear right now, and I don't use it a ton, but every time I use it, it's my favorite thing ever, is my Mutronics mutator, which is like it's known best as the Daft Punk filter. So like when Daft Punk like filters the entire track, they're using this box. It's like a stereo rack mount filter with like a LFO and an envelope follower. And it's just it's so vibey. The new record, the Express I Know Silence, I made all that stuff on the sampler and then I recorded it all through the filter. And it just kind of, it gives it this like stereo movement that is just kind of always happening. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's very extreme. I'm kind of like tweaking the settings all the time, but like it just makes the whole thing like swim in this really beautiful way. Radiohead uses it a lot too.
No, because I listened. All we've got right now is just the first track from your new release, and immediately
the stream. But yeah.
Thank you. No, because a lot of what I mean, I'm like, this is a huge leap from Time Makes Nothing Happen that you're making a sound bath, and this probably would sound terrific on a 4 speaker system, the one I've got in my garage that I play a lot of tapes I review through, and I'm like, this is going to be something really exciting. And then on top of it, your brother Cyrus had joined you, and he's done. I mean, someone informed me online he's toured with Kevin Morby, or he's
currently Kevin Morby's lead guitar player. He was playing bass with him for a few years too. Sick. He's been playing with Kevin for like 6, 7, 8 years now. I mean, a while. Yeah. Pretty much since Kevin like started to like really take off. So I've been in the band.
It shocks me though that you have this release, because way back at the start of this interview, throwback to that, we had mentioned, you talked about, getting a degree for psychiatry, and this itself is a sound bath, such I think a fascinating approach to it. Like it's more in line with some of the stuff T. Gowdy has done over on Constellation. He's done sound therapy work in that realm. Yeah. So seeing this come through, I'm like, whoa.
The connection is definitely there. I mean, for me, it's a joke that I used to make a lot. I said that, for years I made music because I was too afraid to go to therapy. And it seemed like it would be cheaper, which it was not. It was much more expensive.
Yeah.
But in every joke there is a layer of truth. And like the reality is, I experienced a lot of trauma in my life, my childhood, and I've had a lot of, in recent years and going back, like a lot of deaths and losses, and music for me has always been, in the years when I wasn't going to therapy, which is for a long time, music was really like a way for me to kind of just like work through big feelings. And like I think the reason that I'm drawn to making sort of like, you know, beautiful instrumental or nonverbal music is because it allows me to kind of like to just like show the emotions and like kind of like sculpt them almost and not have to explain them or verbalize them, but just like it's a, you know, it really has been for me in my life like a coping mechanism and like a safe space, and also like a way to feel like really good about myself, because it's like this thing that, you know, I feel like I can make this music. I'm the only one who can make this specific music. Nobody else can make this.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why too, like ever since the beginning, you know, when people would ask me like, oh, what kind of gear do you use? Or like, what, you know, how do you do this? Like, I'm happy to tell anybody everything, exactly how I make a record if they want to listen to it, because it you know, it doesn't matter. Like it ultimately, like my inability to make things sound like the things I want them to sound like is what makes them sound like they sound like. And sort of refining that filter over the years has been like, that's the one thing I have as an artist that's mine, you know? And then like the music itself, it is for therapeutic purposes. Like that's always kind of been like the intended goal with it, even, you know, and I think like the reason why I don't make sort of pure ambient music, why there's often like sort of like discordant elements or abrasive elements, is because it to me is like, that's like the honesty in the music and like the sort of the acknowledgement of the complexity of everything. And like, you know, I mean, going back to Ishi, which was like in a lot of ways like my most like beautiful record, but there is like this like creeping sense of dread underneath it too, because, you know, conceptually it was really about like, you know, about death, and it's sort of like what's next, and, you know, where do you go? Like that is you know, that's a scary question. And I think it's like you honor the complexity, and you honor like, you know, not just like the angelic parts, but like the gritty parts too, the ugly parts and the scary stuff. And like, and that's all in there for me. Like that's, you know, I think why I make it in the beginning is to express those things in a way that I don't know how to do otherwise.
Yeah. That was really beautiful.
Yeah, seriously. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this stuff a lot, you know. It's like, you know, because you wonder, why do I do this? Why have I been doing this for so long? But I mean, it's like ultimately it's that. I mean, I think performing is really, I love performing. I love sharing with people. But ultimately it's about, you know, the thing that gets me the most is like when somebody says like, oh, you know, I listened to your record, it like helps me with this, or like it, you know, I listened to your record when I was going through this and it made me feel this. And like, that's like, you know, having been touched by so much music in so many like really deep, intense ways throughout my life, that's the ultimate review. Is like you made something that like touched somebody, that was there for somebody like in a time when they needed it. Like that's you know, that's why I do it, you know.
That's cool.
Should we do some fan questions?
Yeah, should we start wrapping up here?
Yeah.
This will still take some time, but we let's start with the one fan question we definitely did get. Tim from Tiger Village.
Oh, Tim.
And Tim is asking, he just needs to know, what's a random piece of dub trivia, you know? Anything.
Well, my favorite piece of, I mean, I don't know if this is like necessarily dub trivia, but I learned it in a dub context. Was that when I was in Jamaica visiting a studio, God, I can't remember which studio it was. Maybe it'll come back to me. The engineer told me that the sound wave of a kick drum is the same height as a door.
No, that's just so cool though. I'm looking at my door. I really
liked that. I really liked that. I don't know if that counts as like dub trivia.
No, that's important trivia. That's
That's well, okay. My favorite piece of dub trivia is Lee Scratch Perry, known as the Upsetter, and I think like that. You know, I certainly, and I think most people probably assume that it's like because he like, you know, came to like upset things, and he's like, you know, he's like knocking over music, and it's like, but what Roy from Congo told me was like, no, he's called the Upsetter because he was the man who would set you up. like he would hook everybody up. He was the setup man, so he's the upsetter, and that's my favorite piece of dub trivia.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So this next, like,
I'm glad I had one. For a second, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, you're like, so this next random question that I actually have for you. So I was browsing on Instagram. I like searched your name and I found you had a vanity license plate. Instagram, are you bringing that back, or what's up with that?
I stopped it because I realized like I was gonna die if I kept trying to take pictures of license plates. And I missed a few like really incredible ones, and it just like I had to stop. I do, people still send them to me. And
do they? That's sick.
Yeah, people send them to me.
Dude, people remember. That's tight.
Yeah. I should do that. I mean, I have a few novelty. I have that one. I have like a 80s, 90s hardcore live videos Instagram account.
Do you really?
Yeah, that's been kind of dormant, but I need to get back on it.
What's it called?
It's like 80s x 90s x 00 x HXC or something like that. And it's just like, but it was crazy because I like just made it for fun like this past summer. And I was like, I don't know, I'll make a hardcore Instagram that because I was just watching lots of like, YouTube videos of cool hardcore sets. And I got I don't have a ton of followers, but I got like kind of a lot of followers like super fast, like really not trying at all, just like by doing like hashtag hardcore, hashtag power violence. Yeah. And then like posting these videos. I was like, I like followers. But I need to get back on that one because that was a lot of fun. I like doing that one a lot.
Dude, so can you still two-step? If you're thrown into a hardcore pit, could you still do it?
I would probably like break my hip. I think if I went to a hardcore gig, I would, the last like, I've been to a couple like punk shows since then that I've stood like in the back of, but like the last like hardcore show that I went to was seeing Converge in Connecticut in like 2005.
That's dope.
And I got a chunk of hair ripped out of the back of my head in the mosh pit. And then like, and then it was a smoking venue. And I had this, I went to like the back and I was smoking, and this giant, massive straight edge dude kept coming up to me, plucking the cigarette out of my hand after I just lit it, putting it on the ground and stomping it out. And I was just serious? Like, you know what? I was like, I'm done. I was like, I'm too old for this.
That is insane. Oh my God.
Converge had to stop the show like 3 times because people were fighting. It was so, it sucked. It sucked, like, I was like, this is dumb, Dude. It was a shame because I love the music. Yeah. I think now it's funny because now that I'm like doing like Instagram, like the stuff I hated as a kid, like the youth crewy stuff, like I'm obsessed with it now. I'm like, this goes, man. Like this 10-yard fight video like kills.
Oh my God.
But it's just because I think it's because I was terrified of those kids when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And now I'm just like looking at them through my cell phone. And it's like, okay, it's fine. I'm safe. Yeah. They can't come hurt me.
Dude, so back when you were like into hardcore back in the day, did you ever hear about like Oxnard or anything, like Nardcore?
Yeah, no, Oxnard and like that. I mean, the whole like the West Coast thing was like, it was very like big and mysterious. So we were super into like Ebullition Records.
Okay,
tight. So like that,
Santa Barbara,
I mean, there was like that was the big label for me. And like when I started my band, like that was what we wanted to be on that label, And so the West Coast stuff I was really into because there were so many cool bands, and then also like the San Diego, like the GSL.
Oh yeah,
like,
hey, Gravity Records. Like,
oh hell yeah! I mean, like, dude, one of my favorite bands from that era that nobody talks about is Festival of Dead Deer.
Like dude, they're so sick.
Bands.
Yeah, they're so sick. Yeah,
I've got a video of them on my hardcore Instagram page.
Yeah, dude, that's tight. Yeah. What were you saying?
But stuff like that, I just loved. It was so like noisy and abrasive, and like I don't know, it just like it hit that spot perfect. So I loved like Charles Bronson and like all just like the crazy stuff. Combat Wounded Veteran, like the more chaotic and noisy, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this whole area like reps hardcore. Like that's like, hardcore is just like a staple in this area. It's crazy. Like,
well, Connecticut has that reputation too. Connecticut was always like, it was like all the bands loved playing in Connecticut because the shows were the craziest. Like it's some of those, there's just those, I think it's like those little in between cities that tend to be like the hardcore.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. We had do you know, are you familiar with Dan Weish?
No.
Dan Weish. Okay. Yes.
He's on American Dreams.
Yes. I know you get. I don't know, but I know his music. Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Like, anyways, he was involved in like New Jersey hardcore, and it was like a similar thing. He just, dude, it's sick.
Jersey was a great scene too. Yeah.
Yeah. There's actually this band from New Jersey coming through that my friends just booked called Shackled. I don't know if they're old or new. I don't know too much hardcore, but I think it's crazy that they're still coming through here. Like, it's wild, you know?
Oh, and it's just, I mean, that's what I love about it too. It's like, you know, because everybody who's my age is like, oh, your hardcore is dead. I'm like, no, it's not.
It's definitely not dead. Like, that's the thing. Like, hardcore
never die.
Hardcore is not dead.
Died, but definitely there's something going on with hype beasts getting into it, and I think that's a really concerning angle. Or
that is a thing.
Yeah, that's weird, but I guess it makes sense. Like the streetwear thing, I could always see like the confluence of that, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say I finally got to hear the Turnstile album, the crossover hardcore LP.
Right.
Turnstile's sick.
For my money, hardcore is the one American genre that continues to make album level statements, but that is one that is, while it's an album level statement, is very spotty. And I think we're
interesting. I haven't heard it. I've heard a lot of, people talk about them. I saw a video of them playing. They sound good, you know. But
they do. The parts that fascinate me, it's a lot of 2010s dream pop or like it's like Mac DeMarco, King Cruel, Julian Lynch, even kind of style guitar that's like hanging out on the album. I'm like, whoa, this is now going to be part of the hardcore formula from here on out.
But that's the thing. It's like that's the trick because that happens every few years. It's like when I was getting into hardcore, all the bands sounded like Charles Bronson or something. It was like this fast, gnarly, chaotic, you know, West Coast power violence thing. And then like 3 years later, everybody was into like rock and roll, and like all the bands turned into like rock bands, you know. And
it was
just
it's
like,
interesting,
And it's like, oh, this is what hardcore is going to be forever. And it's like, no, that's just what these kids are into.
Yeah.
And then they'll all just like start rock bands, and then they'll stop playing hardcore shows, and then the hardcore shows will keep happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And God bless them. I mean, it's like, as long as there's angry teenagers out there, they need it, you know. It's not for me, but I love it. I love it. I mean, I think it's, you know, I don't know. I still like, I love all the like ephemera. I love the band still of my youth. Like I think that stuff is great. It's untouchable, you know, but I understand that that's entirely nostalgia based, you know, and that's fine. Like it's totally fine.
The guy from Ebullition is still running that label too. Which is crazy.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, and what I love about punk and you know, is there's so many lifers, you know?
Yeah,
and like
for sure.
And it's, you know, it's crazy. I mean, I did sound for the Casualties a few years back.
Oh, that's sick.
And it was crazy. I was like, these guys are so old.
Yeah.
Like, they're just like still doing it. And they were so bad. And like but like, you know, whatever, like, it's just like, I don't know. It's cool. It's, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's not cool to do it when you're 40. I don't know. But then at the same time, I'm like, maybe I want to start like a hardcore band again, though. That seems like it'd be fun.
Honestly, do a hardcore band. That'd be sick.
Just, you know, I mean, like, I talk about it with my friends here all the time. I'm like, we need to start like a low pressure old man hardcore band.
Dude, that'd be so sick,
really well.
dude. That'd be
gonna
so
go really
It
well.
would, dude.
No,
That'd
but
be
the whole
sick.
thing is that like we will never go on tour. We want to be only a local band.
Yeah.
Like that's the goal of the band.
That'd be
only
tight,
local.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All the kids are like, "Who's this? Who's hitting me up? Who's this band? Like,
who's this balding man screaming at me?"
Let's get into the question that maybe I got money involved in this. I got money on the line here, so that's why I got to do this.
Do it.
I come through for you.
So on Friday, even though we didn't get to do the interview on Friday, there was a great Twitter poll. You decided to get in a conversation with Experimental Music Twitter about Stereolab. And I
did not know how well that was going to go. Wow. People love Stereolab.
I've got the 90s tape run outside of paying in a couple other weird ones. And then I got a few of the CDs. I have triples of goodness.
Triples is best. Triples.
You need to have your triples a transient. Get your original CD, get your Warp CD, get your tape with the fun cover.
Hell yeah. That's cool. I don't have any of the tapes. I would love the tapes.
I know. I want a tape too.
The tapes are so good.
The tapes are so cool. Yeah.
for me though, yeah, what is your favorite? What's your favorite Stereolab and what's the best Stereolab? That's really, I think, the question that we need to settle.
Yeah, yeah, because I think there's probably, it might be a difference there. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. Like, I think it's really, I mean, it's a hot race between Cobra and Phases and like Dots and Loops. I think those are both like perfect records. You know, when I got into Stereolab, it was, you know, I mean, they had already been around for a while, but I started with Pang, and I loved Pang, and like I love Switch On Volume 1. I love that era of the band. But then I, you know, going back and listening to that stuff, because I was kind of going through the catalog, and you know, I hadn't listened to the older stuff in a while, and it's like, it sounds like Sonic Youth or like Dinosaur Jr. to me now. Like it's like it's you know, it's big. It's always guitar music, but it's like guitar indie rock, you know, in this way. I think for me, it really, the money zone is when like McIntyre comes on board.
Yes.
You've got his production. I think like what they start to do with Dots and Loops with like, and then with John St. Warner from Mouse on Mars, he's on that one too, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So like this sort of, what I think is so cool about Stereolab is that they make experimental music seem really poppy, and they make pop music seem really experimental. And they do it in this totally seamless way where like they combine so many things together, which is such a dangerous thing to do as a band. And they do it so stylishly, and the lyrics are great, and the production is perfect. And like the layers of kind of like mind on those records. Like, I think for me, Cobra, what's so cool about Cobra is like, you have the John McIntyre thing, and you've got the Sean O'Hagan thing, which is like those god tier Beach Boy arrangements, you know, like so incredible. And then you have Jim O'Rourke just like
showing up, just, hey, what's going on?
Jim O'Rourke like monkey wrench into everything. And it's, I can't, that record sounds so good. It just, I mean, both of those records sound incredible, and like they're beautiful and they're lush, and they're just like, it's one of those things where like, you know, from time to time I'll meet somebody who does not like Stereolab, and I'm like, I don't understand. What is not to like here? This is like, to me, it's like everything I want to hear in music at the same time. And it works, you know, like, but I don't know. I love that they're like a socialist, like pop experimental jazz band. Like, it's been fun. It's the best.
Because I've listened to a lot of this out of order. I mean, I listened, I think, to the main kind of 90s albums in order. And I got up to Sound Dust, and Sound Dust actually pissed me off. I got angry listening. I'm like, yeah, the pedal steel is great, but like, guys, why is the palette have like you have hit your terminal peak of what could be accomplished? But the 90s.
But here's the thing. Sound Dust, it's a miracle that record exists. And considering what happened with Mary and everything, it's like, it's amazing that they came back together and made it. I think Sound Dust is great. I think the records after Sound Dust are great. I don't think they ever made a bad record. I don't think there's part of it. It's like, even going through, I think, the EPs or the singles or stuff and seeing just repeatedly, like when I found, oh God, what was it? It's when they finally, it's like the first EP when they get into Lounge, and that's it. From here on out, Stereolab will always have Lounge. When like on a volume 3 of Aluminum Tombs, the EP with Tropicalia, that becomes then integrated for Dots, and like they kept building the system. But I'm probably Dots and Loops, because at which point you have a pop album that's also a post rock album, but it's post rock by way of the editing, because they were doing Pro Tools, and so they finally it's that
could realize
thing that's like very and that's the McIntyre. I think too. Like
They just realized, I don't know, kind of the production element of like what they wanted to do with 17-minute songs, and then stuff. I don't know. It can at times be very vaguely pop, but also like so beautiful. And the whole cross-continental pollination that then, at which point Elektra doesn't want to put it out on vinyl, but Drag City does the pressing. So then they have a Drag City act, kind of like it all to me. Dots and Loops is the best, but probably Transient is my favorite. Transient was my favorite for a long time. And I think Dots and Loops became my favorite
that, but that era of like early Pro Tools records where like bands were really starting to figure out like what you could do with it is such an interesting time. I mean, one of my favorite all-time records is Joan of Arc, The Gap, which is like,
I have heard like so many people talk about The Gap. I have Live in Chicago 1999, and that blew my mind.
That's an incredible record too, but I think The Gap like takes that and like it does it like to the extreme.
Thanks for exciting me to go chase it down.
Oh, it's a record I will never stop hearing new things in. It's so many. And I remember when it came out, it was like such a big deal. They're like, we used like all 120 tracks that you can use in Pro Tools. And like they did, and like
and I didn't know this. They toured with
for me like one of Tim Kinsella is one of the great. It's like I think one of the greatest minds in like rock music of the 20th century, like and 21st century. Joan of Arc is so criminally underrated.
Yes,
because they could not stand still. They did not give two shits about what anybody thought about that. Well, maybe they did, but they didn't act like it. They just made exactly what they wanted to, and like I just think that catalog like stands as like a perfect statement. I don't like all the records, but I think they're all incredible. Like, and I think he's just like a genius and one of the most interesting people in music to me. Definitely, Tim Kinsella. If you're out there, I love you.
Yeah, dude. Both the brothers made really good stuff. Tim and Mike were both super good.
Yo, God, yeah. And I mean, Make Believe. I saw Make Believe a couple times when that was like a thing, and that was a great band. I went to the Cat and Jazz reunion with my friend. We were like the oldest people there by a long shot, and it was so good. It was so good at the Echoplex. It was incredible. They were so good. They were having so much fun too. Like it was a blast. I've been to a lot of like very underwhelming reunion shows, and that was easily the best one.
I'm really excited. I was like super into like emo stuff, or I guess I still am. Emo is one of my favorite genres, like unapologetically. Are you familiar with like Algernon Cadwallader?
I've heard of it, but I've never listened to it.
Okay,
before.
Dude.
It's like one of those things that's been like in my, the name is flown through my orbit, but yeah.
You should listen to them. They sound like a mid 2000s Cap and Jazz, and they're so sick, and they're going on a reunion. Yeah. Anyways.
That sounds like my jam.
Thomas, listen to Live in Chicago 1999. It's a game changer.
Yeah, Live in Chicago 1999. Or I'd say, the crazy thing is, it's actually called Live in Chicago 1999.
Is it really?
It's just because it's their situated dispatch of being in the town of Chicago in 1999.
It's called Live in Chicago. It's the best. It's the best.
I never got too into Joan of Arc, honestly.
It's not easy to get into. The records can be like kind of impenetrable, but it was I started listening to them kind of when they started, because that was when I was getting into the whole sort of emo thing. So those first few records were really big for me when I was finding like Promise Ring and and I'd heard Captain Jazz and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I love Promise Ring and stuff, like absolutely.
But I've always identified my music as being like like emo ambient, or it's like it's emotional music.
Emo ambient, hell yeah, dude, for sure.
I would like to say I was doing that a long time. I've been doing that for a long time. It's always been important to me, and I think the thing that kind of like made me kind of split from sort of pure experimental music was like, it didn't make me feel enough. And I was like, I'm only interested in music that makes me feel things. I'm not interested in intellectual exercise.
How do you feel?
It can be cool to listen to, but like, it's just not what I want to do.
How do you feel about like the emo ambient movement of today that like Claire and Maurice kind of like, I guess, started calling their stuff?
I mean, it's so cool. It's like such a different version of it than like what I do, but it's like, it's cool to see like a different generation of that. And like, I don't think, I don't think that they were necessarily influenced by me at all, but I do think that like, we probably were listening to some of the same stuff, or like different generations of the same stuff. Yeah. And it's cool to hear how that kind of comes out, because, they're quite a bit younger than me. And it's, what they're doing is like, I hear like the echoes of kind of the second, I mean, it wasn't the second generation, but for me, it was the next generation of emo. Those kind of like, after I kind of got off the bus.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
And it's such a different interpretation, where to me, like emo means like, like heroin, or like Don Martin 3, or like, these sort of like, this kind of like overwrought, like very emotionally intense. It's such a different context, but to get to the same kind of thing, which is like, and I think, their music and the, does a really good job of like evoking like it just feels very like personal, which I really enjoy. I think that that's really cool. And yeah, it's interesting to see sort of like where I really feel like they are on the forefront of kind of like the new school of like experimental music. And it's just such a different thing from what I do, but I really appreciate it. And I find it really fascinating. It's very foreign to me too, but that's exciting. It's cool. And I've gotten to see Claire play before. I've never seen Maury play before, but it was really, I was blown away. It was a really amazing performance. And
I've only seen Claire once.
Unlike anything I'd ever seen before, which is, the older I get, the more impressed I am by that,
Me and Maddie saw Claire at a floating show in LA.
Oh, cool.
With Patrick Shirishi. It was so sick.
I saw Claire at Big Ears, and at this, I was amazed at the giant leap that she had made from shows at the point where she was literally making like a books LP on the spot. Because there was a really radical sense of like, she straight up asked the audience, okay, what, what's my purpose here? I'm just making, she'd run into the audience to like get them to talk about really vulnerable moments they had fucked up, and was adding that into the sound mix. And just, it was like, really, to have that experience was so incredible to see. I'm always amazed by the stuff. She, Lucy, Mari, Nick Zonka.
Oh yeah.
That whole, a lot of other people in that realm, because I think that finally they're really seeing like, ambient music totally has an emotional capacity that's always been there. But I think really situating and contextualizing that through sound in a way that people might not immediately be tapped into is really coming in vogue.
But I think it's immediately effective, and I think like the use of like the field recordings, like the sort of like domestic style home recording things, I think it's like it just, you understand it instantly, and you're like, oh, this is brilliant. It just makes so much sense.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's really cool to see where that's going. And like, I mean, as somebody who worked really just like exclusively in like the realm of synthesis for so long, it's so cool to see like this different, and very like virtuosic take on it. I did like a live collaboration with Claire once. That was like, it was,
that's sick.
This monophonous farewell party thing in Austin. And it was
that's cool.
Me and Claire, Tashi Dorji, Brian Chase. Yeah, I know, it was a really crazy, and it was, I cannot say that it was like good, because like most of us were pretty drunk at that point. It was like at the end of the night. And, like, I was certainly very drunk. Yeah. And what I remember was like at some point just like looking up over at Claire at her table, and she was like taking selfies, and I was like, this, and, like, the shutter
so
sound was,
funny.
like, going through the PA, and I was like, this is sick.
That's so tight.
It was chill. It was very chill. Yeah. I mean, I'm just, it's like, as long as people are doing something that like is authentic to them and like true, like I cannot pretend that my taste means anything. Like I'm just super into people like expressing themselves and like finding a way that is like their way. And like, like it or not, like it doesn't matter, because it's unique and it's real, and it's like, it's your thing. And that's the only qualification to being an artist in my mind, is like finding your thing and doing it,
Yeah. Well, I think that brings us towards the end of the episode here.
Cool.
So good.
Ged, where can people keep up with all things?
I have a Bandcamp that you can find by Googling my name, which will hopefully appear in writing somewhere attached to this.
Yeah.
I don't have to spell it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a Bandcamp. I've got a Twitter and Instagram. I think the Instagram is at @m_Geddes, and the Twitter is Geddes Gengras, all one word. And I mostly those are for jokes, especially Twitter, but I do post about and Stereolab polls.
Yeah, the Stereolab polls.
I mean, then now that I know that that's how you get a ton of engagement, it's just going to be new Stereolab polls every week.
Every week.
up until the album release.
People are coming around to the Blue Niles hats. We love it.
There you go. Yeah. No, it's about time. It's about time. And like, also, what band has ever had better song titles? Like, let's be real, or album titles. But yeah, so you can find me on social media. I do talk about releases there occasionally. You can find me through labels I've worked with. I've got releases on Hefty Mountain, Room 40. Definitely get my Room 40 album, because I don't, not enough people bought that because it only came out on CD. And
hey, CDs are back though, dude. So
CDs are back, but I'm saying it came out a few years ago on CD.
Yeah.
It's still available. So like,
re-promote it.
Participate in the CD revival. Get Light Pipe on Room 40. It's 2.5 hours of music. It's, to me, I think it's the most capital A ambient music I ever made. And then the new one on Hasu, Go Grip That Expressed I Noticed Silence. It comes out next month, and
pre-ordering.
I know, I'm excited.
Pre-order that. And I'll send you guys the link because you're cool. But if you're listening to this, you're not cool unless you pre-order it. So, so do that. No, please. I mean, just give it a listen. I love to think that people listen and enjoy. That's exciting to me.
So Ged, we got one more question here. It's kind of the biggest one of the show.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Yeah. Hit me.
Okay. So a rat is going to jump into your mouth. Do you want this rat to jump into your mouth head first or butt first, and why? And sorry, Maddie, I forgot to lay out the scenario.
Oh no, it's okay.
I'm gonna go with head first, and here is why. Because in this scenario, I just imagine once it jumps in my mouth, it just goes all the way down my throat and into my stomach, and I feel like the tail is gonna get in the way. I just feel like the tail would get in the way, and it would just make the whole situation a lot worse. Yeah, and little else goes on with the rat's hindquarters. But I mean, ultimately, it's going to be bad either way. The head at least feels more aerodynamic. Yeah, no, that's dope. And I like that you were like, I'm just expecting this thing to go straight down to my stomach, because nobody goes that far. Nobody takes. If we exist in a world where a rat is flying into my mouth, then at least can we have the conceit that it then goes straight into my stomach? Yeah. Yeah, no.
And again, this is a white lab rat. You got to remember that. The cleanest rat, really delicious, really good.
I am concerned about the mouth coming in, because that definitely seems like the danger zone. Yeah.
He brushed his teeth.
No. I'm not worried about I'm worried about it biting my mouth, Yeah. That's my concern is the biting of the mouth. Or dude, what if it got... I'm going to go with head first, though. It's sanitary. And although, I don't know, maybe it's easier for it to get out if it goes ass first, because it can kind of just, Yeah, that would actually be kind of scary if it worked its way out. Where do you guys fall on this? Okay, dude. So I would go butt first, and I would pet it on its head and calm it down and put it underneath my hat and make some ratatouille afterwards. Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good one, huh? Yeah.
I know exactly how it would go. I forget how many times I've mentioned, but it's going to be mouth first, and it's going to be a brutal fight. I have run into rats in my shoes. I've opened up a grill, and a rat's come out when I'm putting recycling away in the back area. I've seen rats. There was the mouse that was not too far from my treehouse where I smoke. I've sometimes even thought that the tail of my giant headphones has been a mouse or something, and I flip.
That is so funny. So
I know it's gonna be mouth first, and I'm gonna be nabbing to destroy. I'll probably lose a tooth in the process and probably kill the guy, and it'll be why did I do this? Because I was so scared.
It's the trauma, dude. It's the trauma.
You could probably extrapolate something about our three personalities from the fact that you would make friends with the rat, you would go to war with the rat, I would swallow the rat. I don't know about that. I don't know. But there's something there, it sounds like the beginning of a really bad joke.
Hey, once you get your psychology degree, dude, we're going to have to return to this question, all three of us, and you're just going to have to psychoanalyze and tell us what our answers mean.
Yeah, I'm going to write a book called The Rat Question.
Yes, that would be sick.
Now, your opinion on one implausible scenario can tell you everything you need to know about your personality.
by Dr. Gengras.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool. I'm going to be a doctor. Maybe if I could be a doctor, that's pretty cool,
dude. And then you just, instead of using M. Geddes Gengras, you could just put Dr. Gengras on your records. That'd be sick.
you better believe that the minute that I am a doctor, that all my records will be under the name.
Yeah, dude, that would be so sick, dude. It'd be like some Dr. Mario shit, dude. Like,
I will just be flexing.
Straight up, let's type. Well, anyways, guys, that brings us to the end of the show. Thanks for tuning into TBD on KCSB FM every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. and NetNet Radio every Saturday, 4 p.m. This is Geddes Gengras on TBD. Yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, it was a blast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
It was a really good conversation. Thanks for talking to me.